I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's RealTime Fantasy Sports Show, I'm going to give you my 5 fantasy takeaways from week 3 of the fantasy football season. We still have a game left. The Ravens and Chiefs are yet to play, but I want to give you my 5 takeaways for this week. At this point, first off, there were some tremendous games this weekend, really a lot of great NFL watching going on, a lot of great games, close finishes, high-scoring games, big-time fantasy performances. It was just a great week of NFL action. Hopefully, you came out on the winning side of things in all of your fantasy games. And we still have the Ravens and Chiefs game to be played tonight. So just an awesome week. Week 3 was for NFL watching. Just a tremendous week. So hopefully, you came out on the winning side of things, though, in this great week of NFL action. Okay, my 5 fantasy takeaways. My first one, Josh Allen is the real deal. All right, I was holding out a little bit on proclaiming Allen as the next big thing because he played the Jets and Dolphins to open the season, 2 very bad defenses. Played the Rams this week, though, much stiffer test. He had another 4-touchdown performance. He has 35-plus fantasy points all 3 games this year. The Bills are doing a great job offensively, scheming for Josh Allen. I think it's a great fit for him, the way they're moving him around, creating mismatches for the receivers, for Allen, running the ball, their running backs. I just think it's a great offensive scheme in Buffalo right now. Fits Josh Allen tremendous, and he's having a huge year, and I think he has the possibility of keeping this up. So if you have him as your fantasy quarterback, great work, because I think he could be top 5 all season long. All right, my second fantasy takeaway from week 3, target the Seahawks and Falcons defenses each week. I like to do this. I like to pick on defenses from a fantasy perspective and make sure I get players going against them, whether it's DFS or maybe secondary options on my bench if they're playing these defenses. But right now, the Seahawks and Falcons top my list of defenses to target. Seattle, 497 yards per game they allow. That's almost 500 total yards per game that Seattle's allowing right now. And they also give up 29 points per game. So that's a ton of fantasy points. Their secondary is terrible. They're not getting much of a pass rush as well. So teams are just racking up the yards and points against Seattle right now, and I would target them for fantasy purposes. And now Atlanta, we all know their collapses the last couple weeks. Chicago, again, a big comeback. Atlanta loses another game when they were up big, and the defense had a lot to do with this. They allow 36 points per game and 463 yards per game. So again, a great defense to target for fantasy purposes. All right, my third takeaway from week 3. Some players are on pace for historic performances this season. I know it's a little early. It's fun to look at these numbers, though. And there's some guys right now posting huge numbers on pace for just tremendous things this year. So I'm going to run through the ones that I think are the most interesting. First off, Dak Prescott. He's on pace for 6,336 passing yards right now. Yes, 6,336 passing yards. That would be an NFL record. It'll be interesting to see if he can keep this current pace. Another quarterback, Russell Wilson, on pace for 75 total touchdowns. Russell Wilson is airing it out often, finding the end zone at a huge clip, and he's on pace for 75 touchdowns. I just talked about Josh Allen. Let's see what his numbers would play out over the course of a full season. Right now, he's on pace for 5,536 passing yards and 64 total touchdowns. So Allen is on pace for just a monster fantasy season. Again, it'll be interesting to see if he can keep this toward pace, but it's fun to look at. Now a couple receivers having just huge starts to their year. DeAndre Hopkins, so his move to Arizona has been a good one. His numbers have not dipped at all, and they actually are rising a little bit. He's on pace for 171 receptions for 1,899 yards. Yes, almost 200 receptions, almost 2,000 yards. That's what Hopkins is on pace for right now. So his move to Arizona has been a good one for his fantasy value. And lastly, Calvin Ridley having a breakout year. He's the number 2 receiver with Julio Jones there, but still he's producing big because the Falcons throw all the time, and he's been a great red zone target for the team. Right now, Calvin Ridley, 112 receptions for 1,861 yards and 21 touchdowns. So these 5 players on pace for huge seasons. It's really fun to look at these numbers, and especially fun if you have them on your fantasy teams. So I just wanted to throw that out there for everyone to enjoy. All right, my 4th fantasy takeaway for week 3, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Tom Brady still have something left. Yes, don't write them off just yet. I know Aaron Rodgers has been having a good season, but Brees and Brady, a lot of people have been down on them. But this past week, all 3 players had 3 touchdown games, had great performances, and Brees and Rodgers did this without their number 1 receivers. Both Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas were out of the lineups. Both Brees and Rodgers produced big games despite that. Both had 3 touchdown performances, produced big fantasy teams. And the Bucs offense, I think they're moving things around a little bit to cater to Tom Brady a little more after 3 weeks. They used the tight end a lot more this past week. Rob Gronkowski was finally involved. A lot more play action passes. They had more people in the block. I think the Bucs are kind of evolving things offensively and doing a better job of catering to Brady's strengths. So I think this is a positive for all 3 of these veteran QBs going forward. All right, lastly, my 5th fantasy takeaway for week 3 of the season. Some running back situations continue to baffle me, and I'm sure they baffle you too. A lot of these NFL coaches don't have us fantasy owners in mind when they're running their offenses, and that's clear, especially in Detroit. I just don't get it. Adrian Peterson had 22 carries for 75 yards last week, averaged 3.4 yards per carry. He dominated the work. Kerryon Johnson had just 3 carries for 16 yards, but he averaged 5.3 yards per carry, about 2 yards better than Peterson. He's a younger back. I know he's had injury issues, but he's shown well when he's on the field and healthy, and so I just don't get why he's not getting more chances, and they're giving him to the veteran Peterson, who kind of he still has a little something left, and he's produced okay to date this season. But I still just think Johnson's a much more explosive player, has a better chance to break the big play. And then DeAndre Swift, the rookie back, they used a high pick on this year. A lot of expectations for him coming to the year, but he did not even get a carry in this game. So you give Swift and Johnson just 3 carries and Adrian Peterson 22. I have no idea what's going on in Detroit. I'm just avoiding this situation right now because even if you're using Peterson, he's not helping fantasy teams much. He's not scoring. His yards aren't the best, and he doesn't catch passes. So it's just a situation to avoid. And then Tampa. Leonard Fournette has a huge game in week 2, hits the 100-yard mark. This week, Ronald Jones has almost double the work of Fournette. He had 13 carries for 53 yards. Fournette ran 7 times for just 15 yards. Tampa Bay situation still changes from week to week. You don't know who's going to get the most work. Fournette seems like the guy with the most upside, but Jones keeps getting the chances, and that's been the case most of the year. So, again, another situation you might just want to avoid altogether. All right, those have been my 5 fantasy takeaways from week 3 of the fantasy football season. Again, hopefully you came out on top of things this week, and if not, if you need some big performances tonight in the Monday night game that should be tremendous between the Ravens and Chiefs. Hopefully these guys come through for you and you win your games. This has been Jeff Paur for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Have a great day.